How's everybody doing? Having a good time? Been to some good sessions today? All right, well, sorry that streak ends now, but good to see all of you. Who has been to PSU more than once? Quite a few. 3 times? 4? 5? Okay, all right, very good. All right, we got a winner. How many people are here for the very first time? Awesome. That's great to see. Love it. Okay. I hope you are enjoying the conference as much as I do. It's great to be around other Mac admins, like-minded people, fellow nerds. I should be no surprise. I'm a huge nerd. And we're talking about Apple Intelligence and how to manage it and kind of a bit about what it does and how to manage it and restrict it and some other things related to AI generally, but mostly about Apple Intelligence. And so I've sprinkled a few like D&D references in here as we go along, right? Again, just because that's who I am. So my name is Weldon Dodd. I work at Kandji. I'm a distinguished engineer there. And I get to go out and talk to people a lot about what we're doing. So it's great. But today's about Apple Intelligence. Let me just ask the room real quick. Why did you come to this session? What were you hoping to learn about? You saw it on the list of options. You came here. D&D references. Okay. All right. Yeah, he came for the D&D references. Stay for the Apple Intelligence info. What else? Okay. Anything AI related is consuming the company. I hear that a lot, actually, talking to customers, right? It's not necessarily about us as a device management solution, but it's just our customers want to understand AI and how it fits into the tech stack everywhere. It's going to change a lot of businesses. What else? Any other reasons, thoughts?
With you guys specifically being with Kandji, I wanted to see if you guys were rolling anything out related to
Okay. So he wants to know what Kandji's doing with the AI. There's a couple things we'll touch on. Just about Kandji, what we're doing. Okay, so we'll touch on that a little bit. This presentation is not necessarily about Kandji, right? But I'll sprinkle a few things in there for the, just to please my audience, right? Cool. Any other thoughts, concerns? Partly I'm asking because I want to make sure, like, if there's things that you came for, I want to make sure I direct the conversation there.
I'm interested in, just policy. Like,
Yeah.
so many out there. So any
Yeah.
strategies that people are developing or have already put in place?
Okay, so strategies around creating policies to manage AI. Okay, that's a good one. I don't have a lot in here on that, but we can talk about it. All right, so myself, right? I started in the industry just over 30 years ago. I was at the University of California as a student, and I got a job working in the computer labs, and I managed the Mac lab and the Next lab. And because of that, I got into like teaching classes. And so I taught faculty and staff how to use a computer. It was literally like, this is a mouse. The tail points away from you, right? Hold it in that orientation, right, while you use it. It was that kind of level. But I got into more stuff. And the web was invented while I was at university working in the labs. And so we installed Gopher, and we had the other like really early text-based web browsers on an HPUX system, and then NCSA built Mosaic, and we got images in web pages, and this was amazing, right? And so I got to the end of my time there, and I was interviewing for a job, and one of the questions they asked me, I still remember really vividly, like these 3 older gentlemen, they were interviewing me for this job, and I was a little bit older because I took a break, but I'm like, 23, 24 or something at this point. And they said, anything cool coming out of university? Like, did you see anything cool while you were there? And I was like, yeah, the web. Have you heard about the web? They're like, what's that? And I said, well, you could load a page and has it pictures and text, and they're like, okay, they weren't impressed, right? But that got me into doing stuff. So the other thing that we could do here is like we could ask Apple Intelligence, right? Like, who is Weldon Dodd? And it's actually not super helpful here, right? It finds the first match, which is my own self-contact record in contacts, and just displays that, right? And it's really hard to convince it to give me anything more, like, who's Weldon Dodd from Kandji on the internet. Like, I'm trying to give it things to say, like go to the internet, like go find out more stuff. But Siri here really prefers some of the local sources, like contacts, and it will obviously go there. Now, if I opened up, ChatGPT, which of course Siri is integrated with, and I ask, ChatGPT about it, it will go search the web for general knowledge info and come back with, some images it could find, and, probably it found my biography or LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff, and it'll give me quite a bit more. But this is one little spot where, like, convincing Siri integration with Apple Intelligence to force it to go to the web is not super clear. But you could do some other things too, like you could ask it, like, I'm a nerd, right? So, like, what is a nerd? And it'll give you a definition. I know this is difficult to see, but we'll zoom in. Okay, I don't, obsessive, yes. Introverted, for sure, right? Social skills, depends who you ask, right? But I could ask other kinds of things like, what kinds of things do nerds like? And it'll go out here to the web, right? So I've convinced Siri now to go look. And hey, look, it nailed it, right? Sci-fi, fantasy, role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. Like, okay, ChatGPT knows who I am, right? They get it. So there are some useful things that you can do here with this kind of integration. What is AI? Well, it's kind of a difficult question to pin down a real concise answer, because AI could mean a lot of different things. Apple's been talking about machine learning for quite a while. What's happening today, like in the current moment, is AI really means large language model based solutions or approaches, and that's what everyone's talking about. Is that the only way to do AI? Is that the only type or flavor? No, right? There's other things that could fall into artificial intelligence. We've started adopting this term for like AGI, for general intelligence. The idea that there's something beyond what we have today that expands into general, like, reasoning, which there's a lot of debate about whether large language models are actually reasoning or not. Apple, interestingly, in the last couple months, published a white paper arguing that large language models do not reason in any meaningful way. And there's been some responses to that white paper, suggesting maybe they didn't get all the nuance in it, but it's a topic of debate. But for today, when we're talking about AI, right, we're talking about large language models. And it would be a lie to tell you that I understood how they work, right? But generally, right, we kind of have a general shape of what's going on. You train the model on a large set of data, and it builds inferences around the association between text that appears together all the time. It finds patterns in text and whatnot. So when you ask it to produce an answer, it does a really interesting job of producing text that generally looks like other similar examples that it has in its training data. And so you can get pretty good answers out of it, paragraphs of text that are pretty reasonable summarizations or explanations of a topic, because it has such a large data set to work from. It says, well, I see this over and over again, I can do something kind of similar. But if you ask it to do like math problems, right, it doesn't really do math, right? What it's doing is looking at the text of the question that you've asked and seeing if it can find similar examples that look like that. So there's an interesting tidbit that was published just a couple weeks ago around if you ask the various LLM providers, like, give me a number between 1 and 50, the answer will almost always the first answer comes back as 27. Okay. Well, if you take the mean, I'm blanking in front of an audience, but if you take the mean of 1 to 50, it's 26 and a half. That rounds up to 27, right? So it's not doing math of like generating a random number. You've asked it a question like, give me a number between 1 and 50, and it's saying, well, between 1 and 50 is 26 and a half, and so I'll give you 27. If you ask it again, like, give me a different one or give me another one, now it'll start producing different answers, but there's this interesting bias where a lot of the models will answer 27 on the first try. And I expect that to change, right? The people who train the models will figure out how to adjust it and nudge it in the other direction to produce more random answers when you phrase the question that way. But it's important to understand just kind of generally there's some limitations on what's happening and how it works. For Apple, AI means Apple intelligence, right? And the various features that are available there. So we saw some last year. The rollout of Apple intelligence is kind of protracted a bit. They weren't quite ready with everything that they showed last year, and so it's kind of been a long path, and we still haven't seen everything that was announced last year been delivered. The approach this year at WWDC was a bit different, right? Where everything that they showed or talked about during the keynote is ready to be released, right? Is ready for production. And I think that has to be a response to what happened last year. Now, it's particularly challenging, I think, for us as IT leaders to have our platform vendor like that release features over such a long period of time. We've seen over the last couple of years, Apple's been more willing to introduce things in, like .3 releases, a spring release, whatever. I remember back the Chicago event a few years ago where they released some pretty significant Apple School Manager and school updates in a .3 release in the spring for iPad, things like that. But it's generally true that like what they announce at WWDC, that's what we get in .0. Maybe a couple things get pushed to .1, .2. Now we're seeing things get pushed way later, .3, .4, they still haven't come yet. So it's just the rollout or the staging as IT is maybe a little bit harder to deal with. So we asked about this in the Apple Enterprise Report Card, and my friend Jason Snell, who's at 6colors.com, runs this. Kandji sponsors it or commissions the survey to happen. We let Jason run it the way he wants to because we're not trying to put our thumb on the scale of the results. We just want the results to exist, right? We want the community to be able to talk about what they care about, what's important to them, and have a forum to share that. Jason already does this generally for like the sort of a consumer-oriented report card where he reaches out to other journalists and pundits and commentators on Apple, and he publishes that earlier in the year, and then we follow up with this enterprise one. So if you haven't seen it yet, I want to make you aware of it so that you can participate next year, like we anticipate doing it again, because it's really interesting to track the results over time, and it's a good indicator of like sentiment around how well Apple is serving the needs of enterprise customers, business customers. So this year we have kind of the same set of questions every year, but this year we had some topical questions about AI specifically. And so we asked people, what would you be comfortable with? Do you want it only running on device? Do you want it to be able to reach out to the internet and use third-party providers? Are you good with everything, right? And this is kind of what we got back. So what I get from this chart is that people are pretty open to adopting it. So, about a third say, look, I'm only comfortable with device only. But 2/3, like well over 50% of people are like, yeah, I'm ready, let's go. private cloud compute, everything, give me some flavor of reaching out to AI cloud services, whether that's Apple's private cloud compute or the ChatGPT or other kinds of integrations. So I think generally it's a good sign that people want to adopt it. We also asked, do you currently find AI useful? So this is back from just April, right? It's not that long ago. And again, I think this is pretty strong indication that people want to use AI. This is IT professionals that are responding to the survey. So if I ask the question in this room, right, I'm just curious, like, do you use AI in your day-to-day? Okay. Yeah, I mean, you've touched it. You've used it for work, for your job as a admin. Okay. What are some examples? Like, what are some things that you've done with it? And I'll try to use the catch box. I'll toss it to you.
Code debugging is...
Code debugging?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like whenever I have issues with a code that doesn't work, I ask, here's the error message I'm getting. Can you help me figure it out?
Yeah.
And it's helpful.
Yeah. Who else? Come on. I want to throw this thing. Okay. Okay. We can do it? Okay.
I've used it for generating like project plans.
Yeah.
So outlines, timelines, things like that.
Cool.
And then checking tone for emails.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Right on. Okay, there's another one over here.
Well, confession, I just used it while you were talking. My son-in-law had to write a biography. He's in the military, so it was about his military service. So he asked me to proofread it. I just had Apple Intelligence do it. He's happy with it.
Yeah. Dad is so smart. Yeah, that's awesome. Anyone else? Over here. You could be careful throwing it, but thanks for looking over each other.
I use it to compile reports together.
Yeah.
So my employees all send me their quarterly reports, and then I merge them all together in 5 seconds.
Yeah. I've run into a few use cases like that where some of the stuff is getting built into products now, but the summarization features of AI, I find it immensely useful, right? So if you think about what you can do with AI, you can take a big set of data and reduce it down to a summary, and I find LLMs are really good at that. Now, the opposite of saying, like, I want to give it like a very brief prompt and have it expand out into a long, that's where it starts to hallucinate and kind of invent things and maybe, add some things that aren't real into the results. But that direction of, big set of data down to a small summary, that seems to work really, really well. Okay. All right. So let's talk about private cloud compute for a minute and like what that means. This is the summary that Apple provides on what it works, and this is the pitch. The high-level summary here is it doesn't store your data, it doesn't track what you're doing, it's only for your requests, and they are willing to put their reputation on the line by opening it up to third parties to verify that they are keeping the data private. So how does it work? I stole this diagram from the white paper. And the piece that's important here is the third-party privacy gateway. So when you send your prompt, it goes through this privacy gateway to strip out any of the personally identifiable information, like your device ID and what your Apple account and all that information gets stripped out before it goes to the private cloud compute gateway. And so that way, it can take the request and go act on it and find the answer and send it back. But the request and the answer are never linked to you or your account or your device in any way. So ChatGPT won't know who you are unless you choose to link your ChatGPT account. And then if you've done that, well, that's your choice, right? But there's not going to be anything that happens here that's going to let ChatGPT know who you are unless you choose to do it. So that's great. Like, this is, I think, really important for a lot of people. They'll do some other things too with the request to actually reduce the request and the data that's in it to try to make it private as well. There's a great white paper that explains all this stuff. So what does it do today? Okay, these are the features that are available today with text. So a couple of these I think are kind of cool working out. So writing tools, that just came up where we were talking about helping someone with reviewing their resume or their biography, right, and doing spell check or grammar check and things like that on it. If you're in an application like Notes here that uses the standard Apple text libraries, so you kind of get it for free in a lot of your apps, right? As long as they're using the kind of standard libraries for working with text in the app. Now, if they've written their own implementation of using text or whatever, which some applications do because they want to do fancy things like with code formatting or something, or linting or whatever in app, they might have their own text implementation. They're not going to be able to use the writing tools unless they explicitly add that to their application. But if they're using the standard Apple libraries, all the applications out there would just get this functionality for free. So it just pops up in the contextual menu here, and you can show the writing tools and kind of get a list of options that you want to do. And in here, like as an example, my friend Armin, he chose not to participate in the Apple Enterprise Report Card, and so I'm just going to call him out for that. And I want writing tools to help me compose the message. So I say write a polite request to Armin to participate in Apple Enterprise Report Card next year, right? Not too long a prompt, but just enough to kind of briefly explain what I want it to do. It's going to think for a little bit, right? And it's written a nice little letter for me. Let's give it a quick look. Hope this message finds you well. That seems like a reasonable way to open an email to somebody. I'm writing to kindly request the opportunity to participate in the Apple Enterprise Report Card next year. It's writing it as if I am going to participate. So I would need to change my prompt a little bit, right, to get it to do the right thing. But it gives me some options here. Do I want to make it more formal? Do I want to add more enthusiasm? I could, kind of follow up with one of these options, and it will rewrite it, based on the additional information that I give. And, here we go. So, yeah, it's just shortened it up, made it a little less formal. So this is really nice. You can also do things like writing tools. You can have it proofread, rewrite it, gives you some kind of shortcuts to friendly, professional, concise, summarize, create points. So it will take this text. There's not a lot here, but it's got it down to 2 bullet points to summarize it. So these are things that, I find super useful. I really enjoy like having quick access to the summarizing key points and turn this into a list and all that kind of stuff. And it's all right there kind of built in for you. Notification summaries are cool. Although there's some things that'll come up later, I'll point out. Summaries in Mail. Is anybody using this? Did anybody use Mail? The Mail app? Yes. Have you seen the summaries?
I hate it.
You hate them?
I hate it. Turned
Okay.
off the second I saw it.
Okay, why do you not like them?
I just like my mail to come in order. Just
Yeah,
what
you-
came in now comes in. Just what came in an hour ago. Just keep it right and concise.
So the response was, I just want to see it as it comes in. I'll keep it concise. You don't want to read 2 things. You don't want to read the summary and the email. I want to read the email. I get it. I do find it useful in some situations just to glance at what's going on before I read it. Now I myself, I hate email, right? So like the less time I can spend thinking about email, the better for me. So I'm always looking for tricks to get out of reading it. But there you go. There's some other couple things like the identifying priority messages that seem cool, right? They can recognize patterns and see like, oh, you talk to this person frequently over email. They've sent something. The text of the email, it's not only who it's come from, but the text in the email suggests that it's something important that you should look at, and trying to bubble that up and get your attention. That all seems pretty cool. This is where it goes astray, right? I got this notification summary while I was on vacation, and it did cause me to pause for just a second, right, to understand what was going on. If you can't see the video, it says Weldon Dodd is terminated, or Weldon Dodd terminated is what it says. And the answer to this is that for the company I work for, I had a corporate card that was being used to, like a virtual credit card that was being used to pay for some software, and the need for that card was over, and so the finance team had closed that virtual credit card, and the name of that credit card was Weldon Dodd, right? So yeah, the virtual credit card was terminated. I still had my job, so I was very pleased. No, yeah, it wasn't Arnold Schwarzenegger coming after me. So I was very, very pleased when I looked at the actual message, right? Because the summary didn't quite hit the mark there. Some other things that you can do with Apple Intelligence, working with images. So Apple's taken a very, I would say, cautious approach here. So some tools like Midjourney and others that have come along afterwards have done some really interesting things with image generation. But I think Apple, being aligned with creatives generally and working with a lot of professionals that do creative work in images and video and other things, been a little bit cautious. So what you can do today is Genmoji. There's the image playground where you can ask it to put something together. I was going to show you the image wand thing because it's really cool actually, but I forgot to bring my iPad to the room today, so I can't show that. But when you're in, let's see, I could show it. I could show it this way. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So let's see if iPhone mirroring will work here. I had to unlock my phone. And if we're in Notes, right, you can click on the intelligence features here, and you can do some different things with writing tools and whatnot. On an iPad where you have an Apple Pencil, you can just draw a circle in your note, and it'll prompt you like, what image do you want to go here? And you type in some text like, a castle with a dragon on it, and it creates an image for you. Really pretty cool. So back to images. There some useful things, cleaning up photos. You can remove people, right? Which is a feature that's been around forever, but now it's available in Apple Photos, so directly. So that's kind of nice. And some of the language search stuff is cool. So we've had that for a while with the machine learning side, where you could search for dog, right? And it'll find images that look like a dog. And it was using the previous gen machine learning. Now it's using the current like Apple intelligence models to do that stuff. And so it's getting a little bit better. I find that that's one area where you can really see a big difference in what's available or what's possible with Apple Intelligence or LLM kind of artificial intelligence versus what was available before. Okay, and then coming soon. So, like I mentioned, several of the things that were announced last year have been rolling out slowly. Some have still not been delivered. So Apple product knowledge is there in some degrees, but like not everything that you would ask for is there. You can do things like, how do I make I don't know, how do I change the font in Keynote? Ask it a question like this, And, it says sorry. Okay. How do I turn on, I don't know, accessibility options? Let's try that one. I should have, verified all these. Okay. So I'm running into things where it's saying no.
I think that there might be an internet issue.
Oh, that's possible. I'm connected, but who knows? I've had troubles with Wi-Fi. So it could be that. Could be that, I've not phrased the question in a way that hits this product knowledge database. And so I've kind of seen spotty results with that, where it covers some things. What it does not include in the product knowledge responses is things that are relevant to IT, right? So if you're a Mac admin and you want to know about MDM or whatever, that's not going to show up in these product knowledge answers. But if you want to know how to use Keynote and pages or numbers and things like that, it will. We haven't seen on-screen awareness yet. So that's the idea that you could ask questions about what's currently on your screen. So if you're looking at a web page, you could ask it questions about that. In Tahoe, we're going to see a version of this. I listed it down here, the screenshots to calendar. So what they're saying is, like, if someone sends you an image of, a concert that's coming up, or you take a photo of, some event, whatever, it will read that image and find the text and identify the dates and allow you to create a calendar event because it recognized the dates in the poster or whatever, things like that. So some of this on-screen awareness is coming through image recognition and screenshots and whatnot, but the more general thing that was shown last year around, hey, whatever's on my screen, can you help me work with what I'm seeing here? That's not been delivered. Also the personal context stuff that was shown where hey, what time do I need to leave to pick up my mother? And having it look in mail to find the flight reservation that the mother is on, and look in messages to see, if she's where she is or whatever, and putting together all these different bits of information to tell you okay, based on where you are and where the airport is and what time your flight lands or whatever, you should leave at that time. That's not been delivered yet. Swift Assist, it is coming in Xcode in 26. So I have Tahoe running in a VM. Oops, I think I fat fingered the password. So if we take a look at this, in Xcode, there is this intelligence setting that's new. And this is interesting because it has ChatGPT in there. I don't think I'm actually signed into it on this instance, but the ChatGPT stuff is there kind of front and center, but there's this button to add a model provider, and you can put in a link to any web-based, cloud-based LLM that you want to use. And you can also use local models. So if you download a model and you have it present on your local machine, you can point Xcode at that for code completion and code assisting, all that kind of functionality. And they've really opened it up here to allow you to use whatever you want. So I think it's an interesting contrast that for the Siri integration and what you could do there, it's Apple Intelligence with third-party integration to ChatGPT. But beyond that, there isn't anything else there with the Siri piece. In Xcode, they've made it open. You can choose whatever LLM you want to use. So I think it's just us watching Apple develop this and develop it in real time. And it's going to come out as things are ready. And, the fact that they've did one thing first isn't necessarily an indication that that's the only thing they're ever going to do, right? We're watching them add things and try things as they go along. Okay. Some of the live translation stuff has been shown in Tahoe and in iPadOS 26. The real-time translation of phone calls and messages is fascinating to me, right? I grew up watching like Star Trek, and they had this cool device they would pull out, the universal translator, right? And when I was a little kid, I thought this is amazing. Like it's magic, right? But we're at the point now where your iPhone will be that universal translator. I speak a few languages. I'm trying to learn another one right now, and I'm excited about this because I think it would help me, right? I want to learn to speak the language, but having the live translation is a good guide, right? I could see also where, maybe it would encourage you to not learn the language, but I think it also could help. The last thing I want to point to here is the foundation models, because this was announced this year at WWDC that Apple is going to allow third-party developers to use their foundation models on device to build apps, right? You can integrate those directly. Now, I don't think this is necessarily going to enable new capabilities that we haven't seen before, because I think it's generally true that some of the third-party models like OpenAI's or Anthropic's or even Meta or Grok or Copilot, whatever, Apple's not the leading LLM in terms of like general capabilities and the range of things that it can do. But the advantage that Apple has is those models run on device, and they're optimized to run on Apple Silicon, the A series or the M series chips. And so what this means for developers is, before I say that, the other significant thing is obviously they don't have to reach out over the internet to go get the answer and the latency that gets introduced there. But the other big thing is it's free, right? So if you're an app developer and you want to leverage AI tools in your app, like you don't have to pay for tokens with OpenAI or Grok or whatever, right? You can call this local model completely free. It doesn't cost you as the developer anything. It doesn't add to your costs. You're not looking at a server bill. You're not looking at, a token bill every month to support your product or the users that you're bringing in.
Are there no limitations associated with it? Because when you're using the regular intelligence, there are limitations.
Yeah, the question is about, what kind of limitations are there? And to be honest, I don't think we know the full answer, right? But the way that it's been presented is those models are available on device. They run locally, but all you're using up is battery, okay? So I imagine the limitations would just be similar to any kind of long-running process, right, on iPhone, iPad OS, whatever. But on Mac, you're not going to really face those same kind of limitations, whatever. I think it's super exciting because what will happen is I think a lot of people will add AI functionality to their applications because they can do it for free. And it will open up like lots of possibilities where someone might have thought, I have this really great idea for, let's say, a language learning app. I built some of the stuff myself, right? Just playing around with it. Where, instead of having fixed set of like, here's the vocabulary words you need to learn in this lesson, you can ask, I did something with Gemini, for example. You say, like, give me a list of top 25 words I need to use in a hotel in Italian, right? And it gives you 25 words that are totally relevant, right? Okay, now use those 25 words in a sentence, and it generates 25 sentences that are good enough, right, for me learning basic Italian. But what's unique and interesting about it is I can guide my language learning in whatever direction I want, right? So if I want to learn about sailing, right, I can just type in the prompt, and now I've got 25 words about sailing, and I can do that. If I want to talk about football, which of course I want to do, and I mean like English Premier League football. I live in London, by the way. I didn't mention that. So I'd love to talk about football. Like that's what I want. Those are the kinds of words I want to learn. I can get like customized, personalized guidance that way. That's something that we couldn't do before. AI makes that possible. So now using Apple's foundation models, I could build an app like that There's one that won an Apple Design Award, right? Actually, this past WWDC last month that does things like this. So that's really cool. I'm excited to see what comes from it. All right, this was the Bella Ramsey ad where they showed some of the on-screen awareness and personal context stuff. They pulled that ad, and you can't find it anymore because they haven't quite delivered that stuff yet. Okay, so that's Apple Intelligence, kind of what's going on there. Let's talk about what's happening behind the screen. This is the Dungeon Master screen. That's the joke. Okay. So what is happening? So Apple Intelligence will download the models to the device from the internet. So when you enable it, right, all those models are not necessarily pre-installed on device. It will download them. It doesn't silently. It does not prompt the user about the download. It'll just do it. If you happen to catch it at the right moment, you might see this message that the models are downloading. They are stored in this path, right? So if we take a look in the Finder, I have that open right here. So I'll zoom in just a bit. These mobile assets, UAFs, these are a lot of these are LLM related, Apple Intelligence related models. So you can see the generative model, the image generation stuff. There's some other, you can see Siri dialogues and other things, right? So this is where the models are stored. There's other stuff that's not Apple Intelligence models, but this is where they all are. So if you want to check, like when they were last updated, whatever, you can grab the date modified metadata from these folders and kind of see what's happening, keep track of what's going on. Behind the scenes, Apple's not necessarily providing a ton of detail or info on what version of the model is being updated from OS releases or in between OS updates, but that's where they all are. So if you need to keep track of it, or your boss or your company has questions about what's happening, that's one thing that you can look at. There's a couple ways to tell if a user has enabled the Apple Intelligence and if they've enabled the ChatGPT integration. So there's no direct way to get at this, but we can infer it from the global preferences plist. So I've got Code Runner open here. Let's see. If we look at this one, the global preferences here, there is this GMS availability key. This is the one that gets changed when you enable Apple Intelligence. And you can see there's a bunch of binary data in there. It's actually kind of nonsense, but what they're doing is they're creating an array and then binary encoding that array and then storing it. And that array has a single value, which is an integer, either 0 or 1, right? So I don't know what they're doing, to be honest, but it feels like they went to a lot of effort to kind of obfuscate the fact that this key is on or off, right? True or false. But that's where that's stored. If you look at this setting here, which is in the com.apple.siri preference domain, you can see if the ChatGPT integration is enabled or not here. So 1 is true. I have it turned on my device. Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. So these are the things that you can look at today to kind of see what's happening on devices. So if you're using a device management solution, you could have that script run on all your devices and report back and let you know who has ChatGPT turned on. This, I will say, though, is changing. It changed from 15.3 to 15.4. So the test that I'm running, this computer is 15.4. So the test works on 15.4, but it was slightly different in 15.3. And will it change again? Who knows? Maybe. It's undocumented. It's not something that we could really count on. But again, like if you need to answer to someone today, Who has ChatGPT integration turned on? This is what you have available to do it. All right, so I just showed you that. The other thing that you can do is you can generate a report, and this is available in settings. It will list everything that it's done that's reached out to ChatGPT, so you can see a summary of like what has been sent, what the prompts have been that have been sent, and the responses that have come back. It's really just for your personal use. There's no like programmatic way to collect these reports, so it's just intended for individuals to be able to do it on their own. All right, restrictions. Like if you want to restrict it, these are some of the things you can do. Why would you want to restrict it? A lot of people, creative people, are concerned about, theft of their intellectual property or their copyrighted works. So I grew up with like Frank Metzer and these artists that illustrated Dungeons and Dragons, right? And it's really valuable IP. It's really valuable work. And so the companies that own this, like Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast, which owns Dungeons and Dragons, they don't want this imagery to be copied and used elsewhere without their permission. So you could extrapolate that out to lots of other companies that have IP. They don't want it to be used outside of their domain. There's like trademarked monsters like Mind Flayer, which shows up in Baldur's Gate 3, which is a fantastic video game, by the way. But they don't want other people to use this because this is an original, invented idea that is trademarked and not only copyrighted but also trademarked. Okay, and then we get into some issues like the BBC over in England. They had some issues with Apple because of the way that the news summaries were being rewritten, and they were unhappy with the way that the Apple Intelligence was rewriting the news headlines because it changed the meaning of the headline in some cases. And so Apple's changed that, and so they responded, and so now they will not summarize headlines that come from apps that are tagged as news apps, right? Another one was the New York Times. They were quite concerned with some of the other AI model providers because you could write your prompt in a way that would regurgitate the full New York Times article, right? That was part of the training data, and it would basically spit out the original article. It's unfair to say that like the original article is stored in the model data, but the end result is that it would recreate it, right? And so they were a bit concerned about the way their work was being used. And so there's been some changes around that as well. There are some configuration profile restriction keys that are available for you to deploy with your device management service. So these are the ones that are out now. And almost all of these are Booleans, but on or off. But there's a couple where you can specify, I want to explicitly allow a specific external AI provider, right? And then so you could do the ChatGPT integration, but say it needs to be part of our corporate, like enterprise account. And that's the only way that we can do this integration, because now I have more control over what's happening within our enterprise OpenAI account, and I can keep track of it. I mentioned earlier, like one of the things I really appreciate about using LLMs is being able to take a large set of data and summarize it. It's really tempting to, do things like, hey, I've got this huge CSV of all my customers and every order that they've placed, and I'd like to summarize that and tell me who the top customers in Armenia are, because it would just take me 30 minutes to do that with Excel. And if I could just ask the AI to do it for me and get it in 30 seconds, that sounds great. But now you've sent your list of all your customers and every order they've placed to a third party, right? And so that's concerning for a lot of businesses when you frame it that way. They hear that and they go, well, maybe don't do that. So you might need to think about applying some of these restrictions so that you can say, okay, well, at least they can't do it with Apple Intelligence. They can still open up a web browser and like paste the data in there, but okay, now you've got an HR problem, not necessarily a technical problem. The last ones here, the allow assistant and the mask settings things. These are declarations. They're not restrictions. They're not restriction keys in the restrictions payload, but they're actually declarations. So that's why they're highlighted differently, is because they kind of live in a different space, but they're related to these AI functions. Anybody work in education? K-12? Yeah, several. Okay, 5, 6, 7 people raise their hand. So there's always been controversy in education around allowing proofreading tools, spelling correction, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Submitting AI stuff as work. And so AI just kind of accelerates that whole discussion, or kind of puts it on steroids, right? Where not only could you do spell correct, but you could like have it do complex things for you, whatnot. The math notes thing is really cool because you can like on your iPad just kind of like write out in handwriting calculations, equations, right? And it'll solve them. It'll do it with text too. So you could just type in an equation and it'll solve it for you. You might want to turn that off if you're administering a math test, right? Okay. Enterprise networks. So a lot of this stuff runs on device, but as soon as it needs to reach out to ChatGPT, it's going to hit one of these 4 servers. And so you can interfere with this. I'm not suggesting that this is what you should do, but just to illustrate the point here, let's look at, I cannot talk and type my password at the same time. So here's our Etsy host file. If I asked Siri something like, who is Liverpool looking to sign this week, which is immensely interesting, I'm sure, to everyone in the room. That's not a question that Siri can answer on its own. So I've left the prompts enabled, so it's going to prompt me every time just so we could see it. I say yes, use ChatGPT. I've made a mistake there, but now ChatGPT is going out to the internet to look for the answer to that question, and I'm curious what it's saying. Hugo and Titke. Okay, I haven't heard about him yet, but yeah, if we could sign Isak, that would be awesome. He's great. Newcastle can't afford to keep him, so I'd love to have him play for Liverpool. That'd be great, right? There's a few others. We've had some good signings this summer. I think we're set for the fall. I think we're in good shape. Yeah. But here's the deal. If I go in here and I'm going to modify this, let me grab my list of hosts and I'm going to paste it in here and save this. Now, if I go and ask who Chelsea can't win if they tried, but who's Chelsea looking to sign this summer? I should get the same prompt to use ChatGPT, right? Can't answer that on its own. And so I click go, and it's going to try to reach out over the internet, right, to talk to ChatGPT and get an answer for me. But you can already tell, sorry, I couldn't get an answer, is what it says here. Just to zoom in, boop, okay? Because I've blocked its access to, okay. If I go back here now and remove these, okay. So, and all I'm doing with the Etsy host file is I'm just redirecting those domain names back to null, right, to itself. Localhost, so it won't ever get out to the internet. And so now if I ask the same question, like, who is Chelsea looking to sign this summer? It should prompt me again to use ChatGPT, and hopefully I'll get an answer of whatever terrible player they're looking to add to their squad. So, good luck to them, but we're still going to beat them. All right. So that's kind of what's available there. All right. At this point, before I talk about like Kandji and kind of some of our plans, what any questions about anything I've brought up so far? I've got the mic. If anybody has thoughts. Okay, so let me ask you this then. Who is restricting Apple Intelligence on their devices? Okay, so I'm going to throw this to you. I'm cautious of your water bottle. All right, so okay.
Beautiful.
I've been practicing my rugby throws with my workmates at the office that I'll play rugby. I have no idea about rugby, but they do. So why are you restricting AI tools?
When it came out originally, we didn't have enough information, around whether it's secure or not. We're now only at the point where we're actually putting in a TPRA to get it approved by security.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
We'll see where that goes. Hopefully well. I mean, with the documentation, it's, it should be a no-brainer, but we're not making the decision, so.
Yeah. Understood. The white paper they've written on the security around Apple Intelligence is impressive in its depth and breadth of information that's being provided. So if your security team does have questions about it, like point them at that white paper. Should be good. Okay, who else? Who else is implementing restrictions? Okay, up here in the front. Can we pass it along? Oh, we'll come to you.
Can I just add on to that?
Yeah.
For your security team, in case they don't know, the source code's all available publicly as well, so they can look at that too if they have that skill set.
Yeah, and as part of, if we could pass it along, maybe John, you could help be the middleman there. As part of that, they are allowing third parties to audit that source code and attest to whether or not they think it's secure. So even if you don't have the expertise in your organization to do the review, there will be third parties that are doing it on your behalf.
So for us, I work for the city, so we deal with criminal justice and a lot of the chief of the police and all that. So one of our big concerns was that our detectives were going to use it as a, hey, we have this falling victim asking this, what way could I answer? And even though they're not being malicious about it, but we still don't want to, a lot of it's, can be leaked out or when it's confidential information. So we were really afraid they're going to use it as a, how should I respond to the victim? Now it's in ChatGPT or whatever it is, this is the victim's name and this is the crime that they're getting charged with. So we really had to limit on what they can and can't use.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Most of the third-party AI providers, as the terms of use include that, whatever data you send to them, they can use in their training, right? Yeah. So again, if you send that CSV of like every order that every customer has ever made, right? The terms of use say they can use that in their training data. And so it could show up if someone else asks questions like, who are my competitors' biggest customers? It's like, oh, I happen to have all the data, right? Yeah. And let me give you the answer. That could be bad. And then we get into like criminal justice area where it has real implications for, people's livelihood and reputation and maybe even their access to a fair trial.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Anyone else that's implementing policy restrictions and some thoughts on why you're doing it? Okay. Take that back up here for a moment. Some of the customers I'm talking to, right, thank you. They want to use it. Like the example that comes to mind is creative agencies. They're doing advertising. They're doing these branding campaigns, these kinds of things. And it looks like a threat because it could replace what they do. But I think wisely they recognize if they ignore it and don't do anything about it, they are going to get replaced. So they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we adopt this as quickly as possible so that we can be on the forefront of using it? They actually have an initiative, the one I'm thinking of, they have an initiative to require their employees to use AI. And they're tracking, like they're using a corporate like enterprise account, and so they're able to track like how many tokens each of their employees are using, and they're sending them reminders like, hey, your usage of AI is a bit low this week. Like, remember that this is a priority, this is an initiative for the company for you to adopt and use, right? So that's kind of the opposite approach. I saw an article last week for a school, I can't remember where it is. I think it's somewhere like east of the Mississippi, but I really can't remember the exact school district. But they had created a program to teach their students in primary school, maybe it's secondary, how to use AI, right? As part of their assignments and part of their schoolwork, like how to respond. And, so they want to focus on how to responsibly use it, whatever, but they're encouraging their students to use AI, and they're teaching them how to use AI tools to do their schoolwork, right? Where you see some schools are responding with like, no, right? You can't do any of this. We block it, restrict it. And I have 5 kids, right? I have found that telling kids they can't do something is like the quickest way to encourage them to actually do it and try it or go check it out, right? So I think this other approach of trying to figure out, okay, how could we teach kids how to use AI at school and guide them to using it? It seems to me there's some wisdom in that. Cool. All right, let's talk about Kandji just a little bit. So in our product, we've got, been logged out. Sign back in. So the way we're thinking about this is, again, trying to be reasonable, a bit cautious about it, but we see the advantages. And particularly with things like natural language queries for asking questions about what traditionally you'd have to like build a report and go select a bunch of fields and pick the columns and filters, and you got to click 12 things, right, to build the report. It's not hard, but it's really nice to be able to go up here. We have the Kandji artificial intelligence, and there's some suggestions of things that you could ask it, like prompts that you could provide. So I just pick one of these. Show me all the devices where activation lock is disabled. Now I could go to the reporting section, like pick the fields and choose the filters and do all this stuff. And okay, I've got none, so that's a terrible demo, right? But how about, I think file vault off will give me 2 results, if I remember correctly. And it'll get the answer for me and tell me directly kind of what the result is. That saves me time. I'm not thinking about clicking things and doing all that. Like it was one of the reasons why we built Kandji in the first place was, like, my experience working with Apple professional services and doing other stuff was I would go to customers, over and over again and find that I was doing the exact same things at every single customer, like a computer naming script, file vault escrow key remediation script, right? All this stuff. And eventually it's like, okay, hold on. If I have to do this for every single customer, like, why doesn't the tool just do that, right? And so that was the philosophy, whatever, that we brought to Kandji, was like, let's build a tool that just does the thing that the admin needs it to do so you can get to the result. And as much as I love to fiddle around and solve problems and be clever and show how smart I am because I wrote a cool script or whatever, at the end of the day, like, my employer's not paying me to futz around with scripts, right? They're paying me to get a job done and to focus on it. And so when we're thinking about artificial intelligence, like, that's the way we're thinking about it too. It's like, how do we help get to the answer? How do we get the job done so that you can move on with the rest of your day? So here I've got 2 results. It gives me a summary directly, but if I want, here's the cool thing. I can click view results in Prism, which is the reporting section, And it's built that report with all the filters selected and the right columns in there so that I can see, no recovery keys here for file vault and all that. Okay. I'm cautious about saying something that might be seen as disparaging to any of our competitors, right? I'm trying to be very polite. I personally, I'll just put it this way. Personally, I'm a bit cautious about the idea of using AI to generate bash scripts that I'm going to put into production across my fleet and deploy with my device management service. I think AI could be really useful in helping you to write scripts and to check things and, guide you along or whatever. But I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable with it. Like, I don't want AI to push scripts out into production without human review and testing and a whole process to vet that script before it gets deployed. So we've been a bit cautious in that area, right? We're not really focusing on building features like that. What we've done so far is here, in the Kai piece with being able to query your fleet and see the data. We have some things in mind where we think we can use it to build reports that wouldn't be possible directly from like picking fields in the device information data, because there's other like event data, audit trail kind of data, security data that's related to the device, but it's not directly visible like from the device itself metadata. And so AI might give us a really nice way to be able to combine that. Using natural language queries, we're building a UI to pick all these things and build the relationships and all that might be tougher. Some other things, really what I'm excited about is this ability to like filter and summarize large sets of data. So as we think like within our product, we have a threat like EDR product that'll scan your devices for malicious software or unwanted programs. And we've got we've got file-based detections, right? So if the signature matches a known bad file, right, we catch that. We also have behavioral analysis. So it's like, okay, if this file is doing weird things like creating a whole bunch of temp files or ransomware, it's like all of a sudden it's encrypting a whole bunch of files on disk, right? We can detect those kinds of behaviors and shut it down or quarantine the file. But AI gives us some really interesting possibilities where we can train the AI against normal behavior so that it can help us quickly identify abnormal behavior or anomalous behavior. So this is something that is just harder to do with other techniques that were available to us before, and opens up all these new possibilities that AI makes available to us. So that's a really interesting area. We've also got a vulnerability detection module. So we're scanning software on there, comparing that against the NVD, the National Vulnerability Database, to give you an assessment of threats across your devices. And we're using the CVSS score, the critical, that's not the right word, but anyways, the vulnerability scoring system, to tell you what the severity is. And so again, this is another place where it's like, okay, being able to quickly summarize and use AI to say, okay, here's a bunch of 9s. Do they apply to your environment, right? And is this meaningful to you? It may be a 9, but oftentimes when you read the CVE, it'll tell you, yeah, this is a 9 if the root user has a password and SIP is disabled, right? It's like, okay, well, then it's not a 9, right? Because we have SIP enforced across all our fleet, and we're using MDM to prevent people from disabling SIP. And so really this is meaningless to us. Today you could go in and mark that threat manually and say, yeah, we accept this one, and go ahead and move on. Don't alert me about it again. But it'd be really nice to have some AI added on top of there to suggest to the admin like, hey, this may not be something that you need to ring the alarm bell on because it may not apply to you. So tons of possibilities. We're definitely excited about the future there and what could be coming. In the slide deck, I just want to acknowledge a few people that provided me with really useful information. Of course, Jason, who does the enterprise report card, but Rich Troughton had a good summary of all the restriction keys. Bob Gendler's done some really good work. Joel Bruner did some of the work around identifying, how to see if the ChatGPT integration is turned on or not. So definitely want to thank them. And then, of course, Apple has a bunch of resources available, and those will continue to get updated as we march towards the 26 OS versions and what's coming there. Before I wrap up, there's a couple minutes left. Any questions or other things that people wanted to ask about but didn't come up today? Okay, so I must have done an excellent job of thoroughly covering the whole topic. I know there's lots more, and I couldn't nearly cover all of it, but I hope you found it useful. It gave you some ideas or some nuggets to take away and think about as you go back to your regular jobs. But again, thank you for coming to Penn State. It's great to see you all. Enjoy the rest of your show. Have a great time.